folks, Mr. G here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back working on the C4 Corvette. Problem we're going to be addressing today is long cranking times before the engine actually starts. So I believe it's some kind of a fuel issue, so we're going to do some testing and see what we can find out. So if your Corvette or any other car is experiencing this problem, you might have the same issue. So let's do some checking.
Hey folks, this is Mr. G and welcome to Just Corvette Crazy. On this channel we talk about Corvettes, we fix some Corvettes, and we love to drive our Corvettes. So if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out a lot. Thanks.
Alright, so what we're going to do, anytime you've got a fuel or believe you have a fuel issue, what you want to do is you want to look at the fuel pressure. So you want to use a fuel gauge, attach it to the Schrader valve of the fuel rails. And then we're going to measure the pressure and see what's happening at that moment in time. My guess is we got some kind of a pressure error, and we'll see what we can find out. So stay tuned. Alright, so located on the passenger side on the fuel rail near the back is what's known as a Schrader valve. And basically what it looks like the tire valve from a bicycle, only a little bit bigger. And it's normally covered by a silver cap. Okay, so that's our silver cap. And what we're going to do is we are going to put our fuel pressure gauge onto that Schrader valve. What you want to do is, there is some fuel under pressure a little bit in the fuel rail, even though the car hasn't been run for a couple of days. So you want to put a rag around here just to make sure that we don't have a fuel leak when we put the fuel gauge on. So I'm just going to grab a rag and we'll put it around there, and then we'll mount our fuel gauge. Alright, since we're always careful when working with some fuel, just going to get this rag just to make sure that if there is any fuel that spurts out, we can mop it up quick. Nice thing about my pressure gauge is that I have this nice little right-handed adapter that allows me to put the pressure gauge on the side as opposed to trying to thread it straight down. So basically just going to thread this on and tight. And then the fuel pressure gauge. So that's the fuel pressure gauge looks like. So basically that's just going to go on to the valve here. Again, just finger tight. Alright, so what we're going to do, the way that the C4 operates the L98 is we're going to put the key in and put it into the run position. So not start, just run position. What will happen is the fuel pump will pump for 2 seconds and fill up the fuel rail. If I turn the key off, the pressure should be maintained. So we're looking at somewhere around the 40 psi point for this car. So if I put the key into the run position, the needle should go up as the pressure builds up. And then when I remove the key, the needle should stay. It'll drop ever so slightly over time, but it should not be a fast a fast decrease in pressure. If it is a fast decrease in pressure, then that means we have a leak somewhere in the system. So again, I'm going to put the key on. The pressure should come up to approximately 40. And then when I turn the key off, the pressure should be maintained and then slightly die off over time. And it could take a half an hour to an hour for it to actually die off. If it dies off quick, then that means we have a leak somewhere. And that's the leak down test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it somewhere where I can see it as I'm turning on the key. So I'm just going to lock it there. And I'll take the camera with me inside so we can have a look. Alright, so the pressure gauge is all hooked up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over the engine and see what happens. So the way this car works is if I put the ignition into the run mode, so not start but run, the fuel pump should prime for 2 seconds and build up pressure. So let's try that test first. So turning on the key, and I'm not getting any pressure at all. So the fuel pump is not running and priming the fuel rails with fuel. But yet my car runs. So that means that the fuel pump is working. So let's see if we can get this thing to actually fire up. Alright, so you can see we do have fuel pressure once it starts, but not when I turn the key. You'll notice when I turn the key off that the pressure is holding. That's what's supposed to happen. So if you have a fast pressure drop when you turn off the key, then that means you have a leak in the system somewhere. And that's what's known as a leak down test. So again, the key is on, not running. There we go. So you'll notice that we are holding pressure. So again, that's what's known as a leak down test. So we're holding pressure, so that's good. So we're not experiencing any leaks. But the car didn't start right away. And we have no fuel in the fuel rails when we first turn on the key. All right, a little bit of a lesson. So on the C4s, when you put the key into the run position, it clicks the relay. So the fuel pump relay, which causes the fuel pump to pump for 2 seconds and then shut down. What that does is it pressurizes the fuel rails. Then you move the key into the run position, or sorry, into the start position. So you start the engine. As the engine turns over, the engine starts building oil pressure. When the oil pressure reaches a minimum of 4 pounds per square inch, what happens is the ECU realizes, hey, yes, there is there is oil pressure. So what I'm going to do is I am going to now take control and run the fuel pump. So the ECU starts running the fuel pump, firing the injectors, all of that stuff. But none of it happens before the engine reaches 4 pounds of oil pressure. That's a safety thing, so that if you have no oil pressure, your engine won't start. So in this particular case, when we actually get the engine turning over, it reaches its 4 pounds of pressure. The fuel pump is then turned on by the ECU. Fuel eventually makes it to the rails. The car fires. So what we're missing with this car right now is the 2 seconds of priming that we get when we turn the key into the run position and the relay clicks. So my guess right now is that the relay is not working properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that relay and see what we can come up with. So stay tuned. All right, folks. So basically what we're going to do now is take a look at the relay. So this is the relay here for the fuel pump. Again, our problem is no fuel pressure until the engine is actually turning over. Once the engine turns over, then the ECU kicks on the fuel pump. But the relay itself should kick on for a couple of seconds and prime the fuel rail when I put the key in the run position. That's not happening. We know that the fuel pump is working because we do build pressure. So I'm going to take this relay apart. So there's two screws at the top. Pull the relay out and see if we can take a close look at that relay and see how she's doing. So just give me a second, I'll pull that apart. Alright, so I got the relay out. So that's the relay there. What I'm going to do is clean up the contacts. I'm going to see if I can, they're normally sealed units, but I might be able to cut off and open this baby up and see if I can actually figure out if it's working or not. So I'll take it downstairs to my bench and disassemble it there. But I'm going to clean the contacts from the plug just to make sure everything is good. So normally what I do, I just have a can of spray cleaner and I give it a squirt. So basically the plug itself, give it a little squirt in here like so. And then I grab a rag and a little screwdriver and clean up those connections. So then we'll go downstairs and see if we can get the relay to function. So here we are. We've got the relay out. I clean the contacts on the plug. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and disassemble this relay. So basically it separates into two pieces. It does have like a silicone seal on it. I'm going to remove all of that stuff and then see if I can separate that and figure out if I can get that relay to function and if it's working properly before we go ahead and order a new one. So let me take it apart and I'll be right back with you. Alright, so basically I cracked that seal and there's the relay. There are two parts to every relay. One is the coil and the other is the contact. So I'm just going to see if I can make my light so that we can see this a little better. Okay, so the coil and the contact. So first thing you want to test is to make sure that the contact moves freely, and it does. Okay, so that it's not stuck in a position. And next what we're going to do is we will figure out where these wires come in. We'll put power to the relay and see if we can get the relay to click. If we can get the relay to click, then what we'll do is then check the contacts to make sure that everything is good. So these should be 12-volt relays. So I am going to, these are the two relay points right here and here. Okay, so that's the relay coil. There and there. So that's what's going to power up our relay and get it to click. So we're going to put 12 volts there and see if we can get the relay to click. And then what we'll do is we'll check the contacts. And then we'll follow those traces all the way down to make sure. So we can actually check to see if these contacts down here are making good connection. But first, let's put 12 volts onto the relay coil. So it's this one and this one. So I might be able to get this one underneath here, like that. And then the other one is going to go here. And we'll see if our, well, we don't want that shorting on there. Alright, and we'll see if we can get our relay to actually move. Okay, so the relay is moving. And then we're going to go and check the contacts. So we're going to check to make sure that we have a good connection between our contacts. So that would be, and what we're going to do is we'll set up our meter so when we get a beeping noise when we get a good connection. So that's one side. The other is down here. And what this does is this just verifies that our connecting points are not burnt off and corroded. So now if I close this manually with my hand, we should get a beep. Okay, so those parts are working fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to figure out which of these pins down here at the bottom, which of these pins is actually connected to what part of the relay. So nice thing about this one is it's on a circuit board, so you can see that this pin down here is bringing power to our contact, and this pin here is bringing power to one side of our coil. This pin here is bringing power to the other side of the coil. So let's power up our coils using the plugs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to here and to here. And if I touch this, we should get clicking noise. So that's working. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check the connection part. So it's going to be pin number 1 is going to be our connection point. And the other connection point is going to be here on the opposite side. So here. So now if I move this manually now, we should get that beeping noise. And we don't. Okay, so I'll double check everything here, but it might mean that we have a bad connection. So I'm going to just double check. I'm going to go take this wire and I'm going to go directly to that point. Okay, hold on one sec. Make sure we're not touching anything we're not supposed to touch. So that's going to be that one. That should be the inside. Yes. Okay, that's the inside. And then this is the outside. So I go here, like this. Okay, I'm getting... But when I go to that pin directly, it's a very poor connection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resolder this board because I suspect one of these connections is not good. I'm going to resolder this board, clean up the connector underneath, and then we'll come back and retest. So I'm just going to reflow this solder because it looks pretty rough around some of these contacts, and hopefully that solves our problem. I'll be back. Alright, so we've got the relay all resoldered. Clean the contacts on the bottom. So now we're going to do a test. So again, I am on the contacts, so when I move this over, we get a nice solid beep now. And I will now energize the coil. and make sure that the relay itself is doing its job without me pushing it. So I'm just going to reach in with this wire and activate the contacts. There we go. So now everything is nice and clean and solid. So we know that this relay is now functioning. It's cleaned up. The contacts on the solder have been cleaned up. So the relay itself is functioning now, and it's functioning very well. So we'll go back out to the car and we'll put it on and see if that solves our problem. Back in a bit. Alright, so the relay is back in place. Everything is all nice and fixed up there. So what we're going to do is our final test. So again, here we go. I'm going to turn the key on and we should get fuel pressure build up. There we go. So now we got fuel pressure build up into the rails, and now the car should be easier to start. So let's give it a try. All right, and again, key is off, pressure is holding. All right, so that solves our problem for today. So again, the problem was, in the beginning, we were having a long cranking time before the car actually started. I thought that it was some kind of a fuel delivery problem. So I started checking the fuel pressure. Again, when I turned the key into the run position, there was no fuel pressure being built up in the rails at all. But once the car was cranked over a few times and the ECU took charge of the fuel pump, eventually we got enough fuel that the engine would run. So we took apart the relay circuit, found that we had a faulty relay. We fixed that relay, put it back into the car, and everything seems to work fine. So that solves our problem for today. Good solution. So hopefully this helps you out. Again, Just Corvette Crazy. Please subscribe and have a nice day, everybody.